This is going to be it this time, I promise.
All right.
Excellent connection.
Once more with feeling.
Okay. Let's see if everybody's still with us on LinkedIn saying they don't see anything. Should be live. I don't know where I typed that. Okay. So, hello, everybody.
Hi, everyone.
You can say hello. You can talk.
Hello.
How's it going?
Our guest of honor, besides Fred and Michael, is Emil. And Emil, I think I've known you probably longer than most of the people we've met on all these concerts. I've certainly known Michael longer, but I could not find the hoodie, the Jitsi hoodie, the bright green, red, blue green. So I don't know what happened to it. My wife stole it, and then
there's a market for them now.
And I couldn't find it. I couldn't find a Jitsi T-shirt. So we're going to start with this. I have a bunch of T-shirts lined up. Beats, not bombs. Bunch of T-shirts lined up from all of the different conferences and all that, but no Jitsi.
Well, we're going to have to fix that.
Yeah, you mean there is one?
There's always T-shirts.
There's always T-shirts. All right. Well,
Yeah.
we'll get to that. Let's start by talking about the days when we met. Now, Michael and I had been doing the VUC for quite a while, and at that point, when we went to video, we hooked up with you from SIP Communicator. And those were those days in Strasbourg. So that was before you had a walking desk.
That was before that. Yeah.
Yeah. And the most memorable thing was in Berlin when you ate 2 steaks in the restaurant.
I've done that on occasion. I love my meat.
I guess that's over now.
Yeah, actually, I still love my meat. I'm trying to it's sugar where we have more of a love-hate relationship.
Right.
But it was actually
we'll get into that with Randall Schwartz later because he's
all right.
he lost a bunch of weight too. Anyway, so SIP Communicator, you guys started with SIP. What was the inspiration for SIP in one sentence or more?
So this all started when I was still a kid, and I was an international student in France. I'm Bulgarian originally, and you and I were talking the other day how when you get into VoIP, for many people there has been this pragmatic aspect of I just want to go and call back in the home country cheaper than I can do it on in the traditional way. So there was certainly part of that, but I think my fascination with real-time communication is something dates from earlier, and I can't really explain it. I remember just watching the computer and thinking how amazing it is that behind this thing that I'm working with, now there's a cable or a wireless connection that leads to another thing, that connects me to the entire world. And it sounds such a cliche when you say it, but sometimes very obvious things just hit you on a different level and you're really amazed. So I think I always wanted I always was fascinated by the idea of using computers to communicate. And back when I knew nothing, more nothing than today, because what do we know? But back when I really knew nothing, I was just trying to find my way and see, okay, so how are you supposed to do this stuff with this telephony online? And SIP was just becoming trendy back then. That was in 2002, 2003. It was just about when 3261 was released, the second RSC for SIP. And I remember going through it and reading it. And I now know that for my first 6 years, or I would say, okay, let's not be overly cruel with myself, but at least for the first 4 or 5 years of my work with SIP, I now know that I really didn't understand what that was about. I had some, I had kind of gone through the RFC multiple times, but it's a big thing. And I thought it worked a certain way, and it took me years and a lot of embarrassment down the road to realize, oh, it's actually supposed to work this other way. Like the whole thing with offer answer, for example, with SDP, and let's not get too much into the weeds, but I figured that out much later. So anyways, I knew I wanted to do that on the one hand, and I was really passionate about a lot of the work that I was doing, and like most of us here, we're enthusiasts, right? We got into it because we like doing it. So I really couldn't stomach the idea back when I was a student in 2003 in Strasbourg. I couldn't stomach the idea that I might have to go and work in companies and do really not fascinating stuff. And to me back then, that was having to deal with databases and writing forms for enterprise apps where you just fill in stuff. I couldn't see myself doing that. So I was wondering, but how could you possibly get to do what you want and have enough impact without first doing 10 years of getting good at something and doing the crap stuff? So I remember thinking that, oh, well, look, in the space where we are, you could do open source. And so you could kind of accumulate some sort of notoriety or some sort of, well, not notoriety, doesn't mean the same thing as in French, but you could accumulate credit by contributing open source. So I started with a lot of unfounded confidence of, okay, look, I'm just going to go in this direction, and I'm going to write stuff, and hopefully it will lead to something good. And I think that's probably true. I would encourage young people to do the same. It doesn't matter if you have it all figured out. Just give it your best.
Not to interject for a second. As a young person, you can't have it all figured out, but that's the glory of youth, is that you think you do.
Yeah.
And to have the enthusiasm and just follow whatever catches your curiosity.
It's your best shot. Yes.
Yeah, and I've used this term for so many years. I'm more curious than ambitious, and you just leverage that.
Mm. Yeah.
Hey, Emil, tell me I would like to hear about the first test you made that was successful, that made everybody jump up and down and go, that's it, and high five and all that. How was it done? I mean, because most of us probably called asterisk and heard the Allison echo test or something, but you guys were writing the code. What was the first experience of the test that worked?
I remember that very clearly. The first one that really struck a note with me wasn't even when you write your own thing and then you connect your two things and they can talk to each other. That's nice, but when it really felt nice was back then. Microsoft's Messenger, MSN Messenger, supported SIP. So the funny thing is that I was writing the SIP communicator, and I saw that Microsoft was doing SIP, and I thought, wow, I'm just going to call in, and I think the first two calls didn't work, but then eventually it connected. And I was able to talk from one computer to the other, and it was MSN on one hand and my little shitty thing on the other hand. And so I was able to communicate with this thing that was created by this giant corporation. Me, the person who knows nothing, I'm able to talk to them. And that felt like I was admitted in the circles of the industry, and that's how I felt it. Obviously I wasn't, but it was absolutely a fantastic feeling. It felt like you've passed the test. You can do it. And I remember going to, back then, my thesis advisor, this was in my master's, and I showed him this. I remember he was pretty happy about it too. And we were talking about how far we were going to get. And I said, look, I've been at this for 3 weeks. I can now make calls with MSN Live Messenger. So we're 80% done. So I guess for the next 20 years, we've been working on the remaining 20% of the app. Yeah. You're muted.
I muted myself because I keep changing t-shirts. I know I don't want to make any noise. The next question had to do with our discussion the other day about zooming forward. Speaking of Zoom, you guys started video right around the similar time. Zoom was 2013, something like that. Started in 2011, but I don't know if they probably had anything working. They changed from SIP communicator to Jitsi.
Yes.
And then Jitsi Video Bridge.
Yeah. Oh man, we talked about pivots, and you were calling them pivots and I was calling
And he's
born
frozen.
from the ashes.
Okay.
But so here's what the first version of SIP communicator looked like. The interface is by the way so ridiculous. So this thing on the left, it's a soft phone that can only do audio calls. It isn't clear to me why this logo thing is here. By the way, it was a great logo. Our dad has been doing the logos, and he really liked the Genie. But other than that being a great logo, I'm not sure why this is here, and I'm not sure why this is where. So this is where you see your calls. It's not clear to me why this is a table, and what this thing is doing there. It's like the entire user interface is nonsensical. I could see none of that back then. And this is our first experiment on a mobile device, which was the same summer in 2003. This was a compact iPad, and we were able to get this very shitty resolution. This was a JPEG encoder. So this is what this was first. It was just a native soft phone that you run on your machine. So as I was working on this, and I figured out that if I wanted to use this for communication, I really needed to have the messaging part as well in order for it to cover my communication needs better. So I got really interested in, okay, how can we add messaging to it? And I thought, oh, that entire way that I've written it, first step of realizing how insufficient and improper it is. So I thought, let's just throw it away. Let's start from scratch. And I'm just going to reuse the voice pieces, but I'm going to now build a new thing that can also do messaging. And this is how, kind of the next version came, where we went so hard on the messaging. This is, by the way, where Yana joined me in here, and Damien and some of the first contributors. So it was all about, back then, people were being really annoyed by the proliferation of different messaging protocols. So there was this trend for apps that can handle multiple protocols within the same app, and so that you don't have to launch 3, 5, 10 applications to do it. And we got so focused on messaging that we actually didn't even have telephony for a while, although we did end up adding it eventually. And then with time, we kind of realized that, okay, that thing about different protocols, no one really cares about that. What people want to see is a list of people, and they want to see a call button and a messaging button. So that was another realization. This wasn't quite the same pivot. It wasn't a complete rewrite, although many things changed. But we became much more telephony and video centric again. For whoever cares, at that point we were supporting it with SIP and XMPP, and there was an entire period of time where we were also trying to figure out how can we come up with, and I think this is actually an interesting topic, to the world where it was all about standards and protocols, and how that world is different from the world that we're in today with WebRTC, where protocols matter for almost nothing, or at least not the same way that they used to back then. And I'm obviously generalizing here. So this was kind of the end of the second stage. Up until this point, although we've had this one massive rebirth and then changes, it was still singularly a client, an app that runs on your machine and nothing else. And then when we started doing video, we realized that no, you cannot do that with just a client. You need to have server-side infrastructure. And then we ripped off part of the client and we put it on a server, and that's how Jitsi Video Bridge was born. It's still, it actually has lines of code in here. So at this point, we're at 2013, kind of 2012, 2013. It still has lines of code that were part of the ashes from, you're still muted, by the way, part of the ashes from the first version, but it's Jitsi Video Bridge is an entirely new project. And we still have the client that is supposed to talk to Jitsi Video Bridge. So this is when another pivot comes in, which is with WebRTC. With WebRTC, this thing happened. So if you look at this interface, where we have 5 people, that was written in Java Swing. It was such a pain to write this thing. Amazingly hard. It's Java was never really had its day with user interface. There has been 1 or 2 exceptions, but it was impressively hard to write stuff. and especially when you want to mix things written in Java with native components that come from somewhere else, like video libraries. Very, very hard. And so creating this thing where videos come and pop on the fly, and you want to order them in a somewhat decent fashion was quite a struggle, months and months of work. And then at the same time, I go and look at this WebRTC demo, AppRTC, that's probably written in a day, and I see this effect there where when you connect a call on AppRTC and it kind of rotates your video and replaces it with the other person's video, and that's 2 lines of code, right? You just do a CSS transform. And I'm thinking about months and months of work just to line up a few video tags compared to 2 lines of code to do a massively impressive 3D effect. And I just felt, no, there has to be another burn to ashes here. And that has to happen. This is, when you compare these two things, there's something very wrong in one of the pictures. So this is when we started working on a JavaScript client that now talks to the Jitsi video bridge. So it's like this transgalactic microorganism that infected another planet, and now the other planet is where all the life is happening on the server land. And this is, how we got to Jitsi Meet. Now, interestingly, the first lines of that JavaScript client were written by Fippo, who is another guy who's been a few times, I think, on the VUC. He's definitely a regular and well-known regular of the community. We're good friends. So he was quite the WebRTC enthusiast in the early days, and he was also an XMPP enthusiast. So we were in the same circles. And he was looking at the Jitsi video bridge, and he was saying, "Oh, can this be made to work with WebRTC?" And so he would try to do something. He would tell us this thing broke on the bridge. We would go and fix it on the bridge, and then we started testing together. And this is when the first version of Jitsi Meet was born. And it was massively exciting. I think from all the rewrites that we've done, that was the one when we did it and it felt, oh, we are onto something big here. Like, this is the ease with which it was possible to do these things was phenomenal. And then obviously we adopted Jitsi Meet, and we continued working on it, and that's when it became what it is today. Now, the next time where we had quite a, I would say, a pivot is, we can talk about the various acquisitions that we've had, but the last thing with regard to Jitsi was during the pandemic. Saul, my very dear friend, has been talking about our struggles during the pandemic and how every single day the traffic to this service that we maintain, Meet Jitsi, which is just one deployment of the open source Jitsi, was dabbling. Just every day it dabbles. And that's one of the, this is one of the things that you learn as you grow, that first principles and trying to rationalize your stuff around problems that may happen have their very severe limitations, because, our architecture was supposedly so neat and scalable, and it could handle anything. And it just takes like 3 days of doubling your traffic to think for stuff to start blowing up, and stuff that you didn't expect would ever blow up. It's like, how is this that this logging demon can compromise my entire, architecture? Well, because it blocks up this pipe that blocks up this other thing that makes this other thing crash. And so that was happening a lot. We very proudly managed to figure it out. The picture on the right here is when we had our first week with no outages after 2 weeks of an outage every day, essentially. And we were having a beer. It was it's probably one of the proudest moments of my career, the proudest moment of my career, I would say. But what happened then is that we went all the way up to, 20 million people coming and using our service every month. That's a very expensive service to run, very expensive. And we needed to figure out a way to make it, to somehow have it pay for itself. And we tried to offer a paid package, stuff that you could get on top of Jitsi Meet, and you would pay for that. And there was quite, a good amount of experimentation done. But what we found out, and then we were looking at, we were trying to interview the people who were using the service and see what sort of people they were. And we realized that, trying to chase and compete with paid packages of other service providers, trying to chase the Microsofts and the Googles and the Zooms it's a hard game. Now you could, hey Randall, you could probably, always make sure that with 1/10 of the resources, or in our case, it's more like, I don't know, 1/30 of the resources, you have 70% of what they have, or 80% of what they have. The thing is that the way market efficiency works and the way Pareto distributions work is that, well, 20% is all it takes for someone to take it all, right? Because why would someone use something that is, only has 20% of the features for the same amount of the money, right? And you can quibble a little bit with prices and things like that, but it's not great to try and compete against actors who have already claimed massive chunks of the audience. So what we did realize, however, is that we have a massive advantage with people who were like us, because that was probably for historical reasons, for how we've evolved as a open source community and a small startup. We have always dealt with developers, with IT professionals, with VoIP professionals. And what we realized is that when people wanted to use Jitsi, they would take it and they would run a single installation, and that's a very easy thing to do. And then some of them would have some success and they would need to grow. And at that point, it becomes very hard for them to do all the DevOps and monitoring that we were doing. So we thought that's a service that we can offer people. And this was our latest kind of pivot, or it was a second Phoenix, at least, where we went and created Jitsi as a service where we became an API provider. And I really like what we've done there, but now people can go and subscribe and within a few clicks, they can essentially have their own Jitsi key that they can, and their own Jitsi iframe that they can embed in their apps, and they can be up and running within a day. They can have video in their app. So, and they don't need to worry about scalability or high availability and monitoring and DevOps and none of these things, and the costs are pretty good. So again, I still consider this quite a change in mentality, because we were never a developer product properly before that, although de facto through the open source community we kind of were. But still, it feels like a bit of a change in orientation. So that's kind of the story of pivots in Jitsi.
Okay. We have a bunch of people who have pivoted several times, but you and I were talking the other day about Chris, the mustache is smiling. We're going to get to all of that in a second. We were also talking about open source, and you and I were talking about, show the t-shirt. It's Simwood, one of our best sponsors back in the day. I'll have more t-shirts shortly. We were talking about open source, though, and the idea that some people think that that's all there. I know people who will not use anything that isn't open source.
Yeah.
And
I was one of those for a while, actually.
I'll bet you were. And Randall's with us, and since he's obviously did the whole number, I don't know, Randall. What were you that person, and are you still? And are you muted?
I wasn't speaking yet, so I was muted.
Okay.
Yes.
Good for you.
Am I that person? Am I the won't use anything that's not open source? No, I'm very practical. I'm sitting on a Mac right now, and obviously a lot of the Mac is not open source, but I am running Mac Brew and Mac ports, so I can have a lot of really interesting open source software in my workflow, and that works pretty well.
Is anyone here that guy? Or we don't have any ladies. You know, Allison is supposed to come by maybe later, and Diana said, we were talking about COVID, and I said, it doesn't make any difference to me that the things are opening up here because I never go out. She said, I'm going out right now. So she might be in later.
Yeah.
I rarely use non-open source in business, the exceptions being a phone or, let's say like an iPad or something like that, where the open source alternatives are just shit. But for work, and it's not that Well, one, open source has been good to me. I try to do good by open source, but another thing too is that, too many times in the past, way before open source, there's been changes in the company that can affect the business that we're running, and those go away with open source most of the time.
Has there been that much progress in things like schools and cities and stuff using open source? You see an article occasionally, but I don't know that it's huge.
I'm seeing larger companies move away from Cisco, especially on their phone systems, to open source solutions, which is good. Some of the ones that are very public about it was, for example, Target replaced all of their all of their stores with Chameleon Asterisk.
Was that before or after the huge breach?
Way after.
Okay. Maybe that provoked maybe the breach had something to do with them deciding to do something.
I think it was apples and oranges. It was their phone stuff. They just didn't want to, they saw a benefit in turning up new ones with, not using Cisco Call Manager, as well as, Cisco keeping on moving the goalposts.
Cool. Speaking of the whole other end of open source, we were also talking, because the chat I had with Emil the other day brought up a lot of topics that we could talk about today. We were joking about the idea that, if you guys remember, Chan SIP for asterisk, and how, boy, that was so exciting that you could now make Skype calls and get Skype calls through asterisk. I was like, man, this is it. We've arrived. Fabulous. And if you go forward to today,
don't even start.
Polycom is making Zoom capable. Anyway, I think you all know what I'm talking about. So that's kind of funny. In fact, I invited Andre. Michael, you remember Andre from Polycom? He's still there, and that's great. Maybe he'll drop in at some point.
Yeah, those were quite the days, and as usual with all these movements, people get in for different motivations. There's, if you are excited about Asterisk being able to talk to Skype, then that implies a lot of practical motivations and just being a pragmatist and, hey, I have my thing here. Wouldn't it be awesome if it could also do that?
I think we were excited in 2012 or whatever it was. Not that excited now.
I think that whole thing was a holdover, though, right? That was like a holdover from the earlier period you described, where you had a client trying to do multiple protocols. It was like trying to connect everything and realizing that the other ends of those conversations are making your life very difficult.
Yeah, I actually think that's that was the way that real-time communications used to work at the beginning. They were sort of mapped on the old telephone networks, where you had this notion of you have a regional operator or even a local operator, and everyone connects to it, and that local operator connects to another regional, which connects to a national, which connects to an international, which is where the notion of federation was born. And then you have things like email that were built around the same notion. And the argument, so the conversation became, well, if you're not federated, what else are you going to be? Well, the only thing that you could be is not federated, which implied local, which implied that you're excluding a large part of the word from your communications. So it became essentially a fight again between openness and closeness. And that's where things got really confused with WebRTC, where when WebRTC came along, well, I'm not federated because my system isn't connecting to any other system, but anyone can come and use me. There's nothing local about my service. So what am I supposed to think about this now? Is it good or bad? And many people were on either side of this debate. I actually switched sides around this. I've never figured out stuff really quickly. So it took me a while to realize the full implications. But then you have to, I think where I've arrived is like, look, this entire notion of federation requires a very strong synchronization between the different actors that participate in the ecosystem, between those who do the servers, those who do the clients, those who deploy the networks. And that's why standardization is so massively important. when you are in an area, sorry, let me put that another way. Standardization and synchronization between many people is not easy. It's actually extremely hard. It's one of the hardest problems that we face as a society, to get many people on the same page. So we're not good at it. And it only works out when there isn't much movement, like in telephones or like in email. You know, email is essentially the same that it was 20 years ago. Telephone is essentially the same that it was 100 years ago. It's the same features, right? And the minute you want to be able to introduce innovation, it's impossible to drive it fast and be synchronized with a ton of other people. So you have to drop that constraint if you want to go forward fast. And
it's the least common denominator syndrome,
yes,
right? Yeah.
Yes. And if that's going to be your constraint, and there's cases where it's, you know, it's a good constraint to have, but if that's going to be your constraint, then you can forget about fast innovation. It's just not going to happen. And then if you are going to have fast innovation, then you have to do it alone, and then others are going to catch up and surpass you, and that's how the game is going to.
And we were talking about that in the other chat. There's like dozens of chat platforms that now we're having to juggle and manage and remember who prefers which, and
yes,
we're kind of at that other spectrum that you just mentioned now. Which
brings us back to the complexity of it being a problem to be synchronized with other people, because now you also have to remember how the heck you're supposed to get in touch with that other person.
So in the meantime, there's all this decentralized, movement happening too, which then you kind of wonder, what does that do to the whole federated model that we were just talking about?
Yeah. And also, this is actually coming back in a very interesting way in the debate around moderation and censorship in social networks, because if you only have one big social network that's innovated enough to attract a bazillion users, well, what is that supposed to mean about responsibility? Whose responsibility is it, the content that's there? Usually when it's about responsibility of such things, you want the responsibility to be at the lowest level possible. Like it's like, look, it's the responsibility of this group, and if you don't want to be in this group, go to the other group, and that's how we handle it. But if you have one global actor, then they're kind of struggling. Well, is it our responsibility to go and modify and remove everything that's not truth? What the heck does truth even mean? And they get themselves in these really hard situations. And that's why I think you have people like Jack Dorsey who are now starting to think about federation again, just because I think he doesn't want the responsibility of all that content that's on.
Yeah, who knew what this stuff was going to look like these days?
Expect federation to come back through that door. It's
like the smart terminal, the dumb terminal, talking to the cloud, and back to the microcomputer, back to the cloud. I'd like to complain that John Todd's with us. Not that I'm complaining that he's with us, John. But look at this. What's up with that shirt, John? Well, how come you don't have one of your? Could you change it to one of your tie-dyes or something? No.
Yeah, that's a good point. No, I've been up since very early this morning, so I did not. This is what happened to be sitting at the end of the bed. Okay. So yeah, you're right. I should be in a tie-dye to keep true to form, but no such thing.
So okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, but to the federation question, I mean, it's an interesting topic, and one that's actually becoming more challenging rather than less. I mean, even highly federated systems like the DNS now are kind of coming under attack in the same model, with both centralization as well as the desire to put control points on it. I happen to know something about the DNS these days, but it's a very interesting place to be, in that, especially even in both corporate as well as national boundaries, that highly decentralized platform is both by itself is trying to become centralized, as well as it is trying to be forced to be centralized, or at least to be to have certain sets of rules applied to it. I'm sure Dan knows quite a bit about that as well.
Actually, I think you should tell us more, John. I was about to ask you about because part of this is about catching up what everybody's doing. And sure. I know, but not everybody does. So tell us what.
Oh, so yeah, I'm the general manager of Quad 9, which is a anycasted recursive resolver, a free recursive resolver. So we are worldwide, but we do DNS recursive resolution with security built into it. So we are in some ways, part of that centralization of what used to be a distributed platform. And there are strong advantages to that. But by the same token, the nice thing is that actually you can remain decentralized if you wish. But in some places you can't. Like in China, you have no option to be decentralized in the DNS. You are forced to comply if you're trying to communicate with a certain authoritative destination.
John, can you talk a little bit about what are the advantages of centralization? So obviously there's that, you mentioned China, and that you can understand that one, but in non-China places, what are the advantages of centralization?
Some of the advantages of centralization are, I'll use Quad 9 in particular, and then I'll go to the more generic, but we incorporate, for most of our users, choose to use one of the IP addresses that we use that has a security service on it. So we block malware, phishing, and a whole slew of other bad things. If you use Quad 9, you can't resolve those destinations. I should put a caveat on that. We actually do have an unblocked version of our resolver. You just use a different IP address, but most people choose the blocking service. And we compile that list in a way that it's really, really difficult for end users. Even big enterprises would have a very challenging time building a comprehensive block list that prevents these bad things from happening. So there's one advantage, basically scale. In that we have the ability to scale out our threat lists and do all these other things. Second is configuration. DNS is becoming a lot more complicated. As I said, the DNS itself is trying to centralize in certain ways. So the new encryption protocols like DOT and DOH being layered on top of DNS. A lot of people don't want to figure that out, just like they didn't want to figure out how to make chat multimedia things work on a server of their own, right? Having to pay an administrator to both manage the complexity and cost of those things. Sometimes people just like throw up their hands and say, you know what, I'll just outsource this because it's becoming too complicated for me to figure out how to keep up with the technology and make it work all the time. Well, just like Jitsi's platform, right, as a service, right? You're sort of doing that as a service. DNS as a service now exists with companies like, or foundations, because we're a nonprofit, but organizations like Quad 9 and of course Google and Cloudflare and Cisco and others who do this in the cloud because it's easy. So those are two really strong drivers to this becoming centralized, because people just don't want to do it themselves. But the nice thing about the DNS is you can, right? You want to participate in the DNS as either an authoritative operator or a recursive operator. Great. You can still do that, and it still works just fine if you have the skills and motivation to do it.
Yeah, and I'm sure that on the fringes, some people would need to do that for probably legitimate reasons. But I think the one reason that you're, well, you wouldn't say because that wouldn't be modest, but like what you said is like, well, we compile these lists and we do these things. Essentially what that means is we're able to run your DNS service really, really, really well. Well, if you're really able to run it really, really, really well, then everyone would want you to run their service, right? And that's how Pareto market efficiencies work. It's like if someone offers the best goods on the market, everyone is going to want to buy these goods.
Not necessarily, but I don't agree with best. Yeah, but yeah, I understand your point.
So right, it's going to be a trend, right? The world is complicated, obviously, but things are going to trend toward the few players on the market that have captured talent and value, and so I think that's the advantage of centralization. It's just that everyone wants to get the same things because they're the best things, and then things change and everyone goes to another place. And
playing devil's advocate, the other trend is, like we touched on earlier, decentralization and all the crypto activity that's happening and Web 3.0 and all of this. When deplatforming became a word and a thing, I said, how hard is it to actually, have an alternate strategy? And there's some services out there that, like, if you get a .eth domain, and there's more popping up, .crypto and all these other ones that are like Ethereum based, then they bypass DNS, so you can still have your regular .com. And then if that ever gets deplatformed, or if someone's using a Brave browser or has the MetaMask extension, they can go to your .eth, circumvents all of that traditional DNS, and with IPFS, now you can host your whole React app just like you would have on a cloud, and it's decentralized. So there is no way to stop it, if you will. It is decentralized by nature. You've got other things like your database. You got to figure it out. Go into CRDT or something like that. But yeah, there's some interesting alternatives that are like gaining traction as a trend right now too.
And this discussion, the recording of this discussion, will be available as an MFT if any of you are interested in paying $7 million for it.
There you go.
Hey,
I like
Peter,
that.
I see you sitting patiently. I have no idea what you're doing now. I think I saw a company name under your profile. But tell us a little bit about what's happening.
Well, me, yeah. So I mean, big changes. I was working at a Cision, which got acquired by Converse, which got acquired by a private equity company, and yeah, my team was laid off. So the decision was made that although we had quite a sophisticated communications platform as a service, we hadn't really sold it much. People weren't buying a lot of this stuff in late 2016, early 2017, so they laid everyone off. So after that, I went to work at a company called New Voice Media, which was one of the first companies in cloud telephony, actually, in many ways, because they actually started running hosted contact centers from a data center back in about 1999, 2000. And back then it was all ISDN. It wasn't VoIP, and they moved on to VoIP. And I joined them as a product manager, and then New Voice Media was acquired by Vonage. So I'm now at Vonage, which a lot more people have heard of than New Voice Media, and I'm in the product management team there.
That's the name I was thinking of when I saw that. I
So,
was surprised.
Yeah. So basically, bought. Then the normal range of things go through acquisitions. So yeah,
it's funny how you ended up in product management, because the same thing happened to me, and we both started in engineering. So, do you like it? What is it that you like about it?
I probably describe it more as almost like a recovering engineer in some ways. I guess the funny thing is that, talk about being an engineer. I started programming computers when I was about 6, and I don't really do it very much anymore. I actually basically spent 31 years doing almost nothing but writing computer software, and then felt like I really needed a bit of a change. And it was a confluence of things as well, because I was made redundant just as my son was born. So I ended up in that situation where I needed a job, and this job came along, and it's turned out to be a good job, and I'm happy that I had it. But I was already doing a lot more strategic stuff than actually software engineering. I'd already moved more from writing code through to being sort of the architecture, trying to keep engineers honest, because engineers it's like herding cats, and starting to think about the strategy. And so moving on to product management was a logical next step at that point.
Okay, I'm in about 700 chats now. Speaking of chats, YouTube, LinkedIn. I didn't even know there was a group in LinkedIn chat, but there it is. That was probably the best way to transmit the URL. The guy who has the longest list, I'm going to guess. Michael, who would you think of the faces we see here has the longest list of pivots or companies or whatever? I think he's wearing a mustache of some kind.
Oh, probably Chris. Yeah.
It has to be Chris. Right?
I've never really, ever since that whole Terminator thing, I'm.
well, good news. I've moved on from building the Terminator Skynet. Now I think I'm building the Matrix. So.
So what's the latest in the
my new thing is grouproom.io. So it's yet another telecom communications type company. It's spatially aware video chat. So it's this idea that you can have either a 2D or 3D space, and you've got your little video in a little ball, a little bubble, and you float around the space, you move around the space, and you can only hear people that you get next to. So it's kind of interesting. Like here, you can only have one conversation at a time. With Group Room, you could have, dozens of conversations, just move over to another area of the space and chat. So it's kind of been really interesting, especially dabbling between 2D and 3D spaces.
And do you think that's going to move? I think you've spoken of this, but maybe not with relation to what you just said. Is this all going to move into some kind of touchy-feely virtual thing where you can grab somebody's hand or other body part, or not?
So
not what
they say that's usually the industry that picks up this technology first, right? But I'm using just pure WebXR type technologies, WebRTC, WebXR, and it truly runs across mobile, desktop, VR, and AR. So you literally could put a HoloLens, pair of glasses on, or an Oculus VR glasses, and still move around the space and chat with people. This is what's really weird. It's this co-presence idea, Randy, that you kind of touched on. It's this idea that soon you'll be able to LiDAR scan your room, with the iPhone 12 or an iPad, and you'll be able to say, hey, let me invite my friends in VR or desktop or mobile to teleport into my room that I just scanned, and you would see them as true AR, either avatars or video bubbles, floating around your space. And if they sit on your couch in the scanned room, you literally see them sitting on the couch in the real room. So that is all coming. Yeah.
But you'll never have to look for the change they dropped on that couch.
That's it.
Chris, you shared a link that I actually didn't click. I mean, I saw it on Twitter, and you shared it as well today. And I didn't really click to go see the story because I don't click generally. But I'm going to ask you now. So this was a portal in front of a railroad station, I guess. What was that? Is that where you can? There's two portals in two cities, and when you walk by, you see somebody else. Kind of. Is that what that is?
Yep. Yeah. It was kind of using some camera and screen type technology. But once those Apple glasses are released, next year, millions of people will believe that that's real, reality. Like if you've got dozens of people standing in the street, looking at something and you can't see it, you're going to want to go buy those glasses to see what you can't see around you. But yeah, both in that experiment, people in another country potentially could see you and you could see them through a portal, if you will. But that will be normal, like without hardware, like in a couple of years.
One of the reasons I'm pushing, I laughed at Clubhouse. I thought it was really annoying that it was only available for Apple and so on. But the interesting thing about it, if you could drop the video idea for just a second, if audio is suddenly becoming a big thing again. It's funny. And the only relation to what we just said and we're talking about is this idea that if you have that on in your house, and by the way, not necessarily on your phone. I hate that particular thing is tied to your phone, in fact. But the point is you've got this audio point, which means that you could be in this big group of friends. Yeah, you can have Jitsi on, you can have Teams, you can have the other 1,000, clients. You can have IRC, you can have all that. Oh, I sound distant. Okay, wait a minute. What happened here? Hello. Yeah, maybe my thing needs to be augmented a little. How's that? That should be better.
Yep.
Anyway, point is, if you have this audio portal on, first of all, you can walk by it naked and nobody cares. And second of all, if it's on all the time and you have a small group, I mean, you don't want 800 people on it. But if you had a small group like we're doing right now, and it's just always on, you go, hey, what's happening? Tim Panton was telling me that they were doing that at Wire. By the way, Wire is the shirt I have on right now. I think that's a good idea. The only problem is the branding of Clubhouse is too, it's too Apple, even though it's on Android now. But it's too restrictive, and it's unfortunate that they have that image, because I think that's probably the best use. I've been in a lot of rooms. It's like there's some pretty silly stuff going on. There's a couple of good things too, like sort of live podcasts that aren't recorded. Wait a minute, live podcasts that aren't recorded. Okay, I don't see that, right? Unless you need to have the confidentiality or whatever, the exclusivity. But anyway, that's something that I wish people would that people that I know would get into. I saw Lorenzo here for a second. I don't know if I see an LM. Lorenzo, you don't have any video. Excuse me, don't have any video. He was.
Hey, Phil. Sorry, I was on the phone.
Hey, Lorenzo.
I was just listening in parallel.
What are you up to, man? What are you guys doing?
Capturing packets day and night, as usual. That's our life mission, and it's likely never going to change. Nice to see everyone. So yeah, just sniffing everybody's business as usual, and putting it on dashboards and screens. That's our still our mission statement. So yeah, just still working on Homer, company growing up, lots of customers. We ended up in the enterprise market somehow over the years, instead of, let's say, pure, telecom and operators as it used to be at the beginning. And now we're enjoying this new market where they seem to be willing to pay a lot more for the same stuff. And it's sponsoring our development, team is growing, that kind of stuff, having fun.
Very cool. And by the way, probably everyone here. Hello, Daniel. By the way, you missed the T-shirt. I had it on a minute.
Daniel.
Probably just about everybody here. Maybe Randall is not, but most of you guys, your businesses has been changed by the fact that everybody's doing what we call in France distanciel. When they go, my wife is a teacher. When she goes to teach in person in the school, it's présentiel. And when you're doing it from home, it's distanciel. So that's one of those rare exceptions where the French words are actually really good. Is there an Italian equivalent to that, Lorenzo?
I can't think of one.
Yeah, see, so the French are pretty clever with that kind of thing when they're not using English words like weekend and the rest. Anyway, Daniel, what's the new version?
As usual, so probably I'm the guy here that didn't change much for the past maybe almost 20 years or so in terms of the work. Camaillo, okay, the name of the project changed a few times, but the same kind of SIP, voice over IP, signaling. In September, yeah, it's going to be like 20 years of development for the project from the moment of the first recorded commit back in 2001 was, I think, CVS. Then we switched later to SVN and Git, but we recorded the entire history of application development. So feels like being pretty old, 20 years doing more or less the same. I heard a little bit Peter on YouTube before joining here. So he was also with Camaillo for a long time. Now it's project management, so he changed it. But yeah, still challenging times now with the pandemic around, and, we need real-time communication more than ever. And SIP is the standard.
In the case of Camaillo World in Berlin, obviously that's one of everybody's favorites. I guess, Emil, you haven't been there for a while because you're no longer in Europe. So that's a problem.
It still was a favorite, though. And I'm actually remembering now that it was you, Daniel, who introduced us to Randy. You said, I think it was in end of 2007 or 2008. You said, do you know the VoIP Users Conference? No, what are the VoIPs? Don't you know Randy? You guys should meet. And you made the introduction. So thank you for that.
I think so, yeah. I remember something like
that. What do you mean?
A long time ago.
Yeah, well, none of us are getting any younger, that's for sure. Well, I tried to get females in here, but they're not interested, apparently. Very hard to attract the female of the species into these sausage parties.
And you've been trying your best with all these T-shirts, flashing a little bit of skin every now and
then. Yeah, well, hopefully that's not too visible. Which Alan is this? Alan, I see an Alan, but I don't know which one it is. So come on in, Alan. If it's, we missed the, yeah, it's Alan Quayle. Anthony Quayle's cousin.
Very, very distant.
Look at the beautiful hair and beard. That's fantastic.
What can I say? No need to, it's only an image. You don't have to be like sort of near me with all the shedding you get with so much hair.
I would not have, you should have had the video on the whole time. You're looking good, man. I just got a haircut yesterday. Alan, I've been seeing a bunch of your activity. I think we see it all year round, actually.
Yeah.
You figured out a way to make it all perennial. It's constant, right?
I apologize. I know I spam everybody's LinkedIn with, but we're trying to do good stuff. It's like with Tetsuma Asia, we were showing how telecom APIs can and is encouraging female entrepreneurship, and the fact that they have Idea Smart for women, and I was then prodding all the telcos and the CPaaS providers to say, hey, where's your metrics around female engagement? and basically sort of you're creating female entrepreneurship within either your platform or the countries. So we're doing a little bit, and then I had Craig Richards on, who's been a supporter of TAD Summit for years now, and he's been getting really interested in quantum computing. So it was really great to get Craig to give a very practical, engineer-focused, and also doing some hacking with quantum computing in real time during his presentation. So that was nice, because that was the IBM quantum experience. So tons of and then all the usual CPaaS, UCaaS, contact center crap that hey, we're on here using it today. So and then we got TAD Hack coming up at the end of September. As you can imagine, running any type of event during a pandemic is an utter pain in the arse. Oh my God. It's like all the marketing people just run and cover themselves and going, no, I don't want to give you any money. But, we try.
It's all virtual now, though, right?
Virtual sucks.
I mean,
for events.
You guys actually, you very often used that way before the pandemic. You were using it to be more inclusive, I assume.
Exactly. We've always had, virtual has always been there. From the first TAD Hack, we always allowed remote entries. So, it's not, to be honest with you, been that much different in terms of how we run the events. I mean, TAD Hack last year was virtual except for one location, Berlin. So Berlin was in person, and they had some really great hacks. Again, to your point around virtual teaching, there was a very diverse team. There was actually a teacher, no programming experience, but the hack they put together to address specific problems in virtual teaching was great, because you need to bring the parents in. Parents need to know what work has been assigned. I mean, one of the gripes I have is music lessons over Zoom or any other platform. They are appalling. Especially when it's band practice. It's almost like it's a Monty Python sketch with the lag. And the problem is, it's like the schools compound it by all the different internet access, the fact that some people go hands-free, and also they use like the cheapest Chromebooks possible. And then so you've got so many sources of delay and lag. And then you've got teachers that, they're teachers. They're not IT technicians. And even just getting the damn thing up and running. So anyway, it's been fun and painful to see how, the technology that we've worked with for decades is used, abused, and still doesn't make people happy.
There's an absolutely huge, I saw this because I'm watching what my wife has to go through. And by the way, it's exhausting for her.
Yeah.
She'd much rather be in person
Yeah.
dealing with these people. But the point is, someone is going to come up with a paradigm, just like Asterisk and Jitsi, and where people go, hey, there's a need for this. Someone is going to come up with the teaching, the idea of how this is going to work, because you have a lot of specific problems. I think you kind of mentioned this, but what she tells me is that you really can't tell if anybody's paying attention, of course. So there's, they're there, and then if they mute their video, so they have to go through all these rules about, well, if you mute your video, you're not going to be counted. So I have to be able to see you. And then there's breaks and the whole shop. As far as music instruction, you fellows probably all understand that over the past pandemic period, it's like, a year and a half now.
Yeah.
Online lessons, both one-on-one and master classes, are huge for musicians. And anyone you ever heard of, well, maybe not Herbie Hancock, although I think people at that level even are doing this, are giving these master classes because, hey, there's no gigs. They can't work. They can't play anywhere live. So, and there's one school that I'm in that doesn't do it live. This is a brilliant paradigm that they've, I guess, patented, because I don't think anybody else does this. Mm-hmm. And what it is you have a world-class teacher of different instruments. I'm on the saxophone thing with Eric Marienthal. He's a multi-Grammy Award winner and a huge, huge star. Plus, he's a great musician. He's not just the, pop. He can play anything. And he's teaching people of any level. And the way they're, because I don't think anybody knows how this works, just to try to understand this. There's a bunch of lessons. Everybody does that. So you can go look at the recorded videos. You can download the music or whatever. But what makes artist works interesting and unique is that you send a video to the teacher. It can be an exercise, it can be anything though.
Yeah.
But usually it's an exercise or a song that they've asked for, and that's part of the program. Of course, if anybody knows me, you know that I probably have never sent anything that's actually in the program. I just send my own stuff. But the point is, he looks at it, or she sometimes, the teacher, whoever you're with, will look at it and do a critique. And the interesting, I mean, you know, they come back to you with, let's say, 10 minutes about, yeah, sounds good, but you could look into this or whatever.
Yeah.
But first of all, it requires the patience of a saint.
Yes.
And these people, remember, these are people are at the top of what they're doing. And it's amazing to me that they can teach folks that are at the very low level. And also, you can see everyone else's. It's like everybody's in the class naked, only not literally. You can see everyone else's lessons.
Yeah.
You see their lesson, you see what they do, and you see what the teacher does. So this is an amazing wealth. You've got hundreds of these videos, and you can find the level that you're interested in or the style or whatever.
Yeah.
And I just think that they must be protected with that IP somehow, because it's absolutely brilliant, very efficient. Now, anything else that you've seen, like teaching coding and stuff, it's always going to be generalized. It's always going to be like the tutorials. By the way, what's up with YouTube? You do a search for any subject and you get 700 videos that take 5, 10, 20 minutes to explain the thing that you could have read in one line if you could only find a text article.
But that's because you're old, Randy.
No, how
it's
do you
like all the millennials just want to watch a video at 2x. That's it. You know, they refer to documentation as walls of text. They just want a video, 2x, 4x, and they're done. You know,
well, we do know that no one reads on the internet, but the fact is, if you want to find out how to reboot the file finder on Mac, for example, there's videos on that. I mean, it's one little command to type. Plus, they're not only videos. Mike will appreciate this. They're not only videos, but they're videos with terrible audio. You have to turn it way up and it's noisy and everything. I mean,
exactly.
Why take 2 minutes to convey a critical bit of information when you can take 20 minutes and become famous in the process?
Exactly. Plus, that's 20 minutes for advertising. So you've got 4 advertising slots. In fact, you know, for like my son at the moment is into Mr. Beast. Oh, I hate that guy. But, you know, amazingly rich and popular. And YouTube encourages them to do longer videos. Yeah. Even though they're catering to basically sort of, you know, an 11-year-old boy that has the attention span of a puppy, you know, that it's 15 minutes minimum. So they can get basically the product placement in, they can get the adverts in there. So it's all driven around the advertiser.
And now YouTube is copying TikTok. So they've got the YouTube Shorts. And I was booted into one of those. I didn't ask for anything, but I just found myself in one. It's exactly like TikTok. Mike White, you turned off your video, but I'm very interested in seeing you. Come on in and tell us about what's going on, unless you're on a call, customer call maybe. No, here he is. Michael, what's up? Unmute. And turn some light on, by the way. Can't hear you and no light. I don't know if you still look like George Clooney or not. Oh, no. Well, you know, Linux doesn't do audio. You know that, right? We used to joke about that with life. Well, we don't have you. Plus, why are you so dark?
Should have me now.
You got you.
There we go. Sorry about that. Too many audio devices.
Right.
Hey, thanks for having me, folks. I think this was a good idea. Sorry I didn't make it here sooner. I was trying to check out to make a quick phone call, but you busted me, so I'm back.
I knew it.
Certainly appreciate this going down. It's nice to see all these faces, but I think we all, you know, to be honest, we're not all the young VoIP guys we used to be, right?
No.
Man, there's a lot more gray hair on this call than I was expecting to see. But, you know, just the graybeard guys here. Randall, it's been a long time. How have you been, sir? I don't think we've spoken in person in a long time, either Randall, but it's been a minute. Everyone's doing great? That's what I like to hear.
Still doing E4?
Well, we had some news. I don't know if you caught it, but February 29th last year, Leap Day, Sangoma acquired E4. We were brought in to lead open source sales in that group. So my team joined, and it's been really exciting and really fun. And, you know, it's kind of like I like to think of it as sort of a crescendo for my career in VoIP. I got started with Asterisk and FreePBX, and, you know, now I get an opportunity to sit at the head of the table with legends like Matt Fredrickson and Lauren Gates and Josh Culp and that crew. So it's fun and it's exciting. I've never, you know, been on this side of the table. It's really exciting to be part of a company that does open source and that's, you know, working to figure out better ways to grow the community and keep the community happy and do better things and be better stewards. And, you know, it's not a one-day project, but I think we're going in the right direction, and that excites me a lot.
That's great. Sangoma had gobbled up a lot of, I'm hearing myself back through, has gobbled up a lot of things. Randall, you wanted to tell, you said something in the chat. I can't talk. I can't hear myself back. You said you could speak about Zoom, how Zoom has affected you. Is that you?
This time you are muted.
This time you are muted.
Yeah, problem with hardware mutes. I'm hearing myself come back. Somebody must have open.
Mike White is echoing.
Oh, okay. Echo. Yep, still happening. Oh well. Yeah, need to go on a headset or something. Like I need to tell any people here that it's like, come on, we all know about echo cancellation by now. So I've been doing a lot of cool stuff. I've been I gave up Floss Weekly last year after 13 years. I figured it was time to retire, and I believe I helped put Jitsi on the map. So that was a lot of fun.
You absolutely did, Randall. You had us twice, and one of them was for the days we were still trying to chase after the Skype concept, and then the second one was after we went into WebRTC.
Yeah, but we had you 4 times.
Yeah. So that was cool. And what I've become now, I'm still coding for hire in Perl, but my big new love affair is with Flutter and Dart. In fact, I'm a Google developer expert in Flutter and Dart, so I get called in to go to meetings all over the world. And I was actually going to talk to that point earlier, which is that one of the ways that the pandemic has affected me is that Google has these things called Google Developer Groups, GDGs. And so they would have a city GDG meeting. So like there's one in Portland, there's one in Seattle, like that. But all of those have been shut down for the last year. And so instead, GDG meetups all over the world have been topic focused. So now there's like a lot of Flutter GDGs. So I plan on continuing my participation in those. I literally was in 3 different places in Africa in one weekend. Being there available for Q&A, being available for short talks and things like that. And that really has changed my industry and impacts me directly because I'm getting to go to all these cool places I haven't been to, some of them for real, not even in real life, even though I've been in 150 countries already. So that's been great. And I think that's actually been useful for a lot of people. It sucks having just a Zoom meeting or a Google Hangout, but because there's much more limited interaction. But I don't know what's going to happen when these groups start meeting up in person only again. I won't be able to be there anymore, and for me that will be a big loss. So it kind of sucks on that.
Well, probably in most of the places that everyone in this call are whatever, things are opening up. I can only speak to here in France, which is a small country just above Spain and Italy, in case you didn't know. And there is no current king, as one of my friend's fathers asked. Hasn't been one for quite a few years. Anyway, things have been opening up, and I think today the mask thing was lifted in most places, not indoors, by the way, but lots of, the gatherings have gone up in number. So now there are only restrictions here with regard to really big gatherings like the marketplace where you should wear a mask. But the point is the confinement funny thing about the press and the media, by the way, because I was raging on Twitter about this. There were articles a few weeks ago because there was a curfew and the press was talking about confinement. Bitch, confinement is when you can't leave your house, okay? That's confinement. That's what that word means. You're journalists, you're supposed to know that. So, we haven't had confinement. Even the first confinement wasn't total. The only place I know of that there was actually confinement is China. Does anybody know of any place else where you'd be shot or arrested if you set foot outside your house? No, that never existed.
India.
So, come on.
India.
Well, in France, you could be fined for going outside, right?
Yeah, there's still people in India right now that can't leave their house.
I understand that now because
and Australia as well was very strict. Also, parts of Italy at certain points in time were very strict. You would meet a police officer who would ask your reason for being outside.
Well, we had papers we had to fill out, but I mean, you still could go out, and it was supposedly limited to an hour a day. But the fact is, you just filled out another paper. In fact, eventually they had an app, and the app had a memory, so it just did a new time stamp, and you could do anything you want. By the way, South Africa prohibited the sale of alcoholic beverages for a while, so that's kind of counter intuitive, because if you're going to be confined to home, you probably want to have a little drink. I mean, speaking for myself, anyway, I would want to be confined, at least a beer or something. But I don't think that lasted too long. Anyway,
Randy, I'll share some expat experience from Central America. When the pandemic hit, Costa Rica shut the borders down completely, and then they implemented a rather draconian strategy for keeping people away from each other. One of the things they did was they made it so that if your license plate ended in a certain number of character, you could only drive on certain days, and alcohol was completely out of the question. So in the early moments of the pandemic, everything was pretty much shut down and locked down. They even closed the beaches.
I just have to interrupt you here. Does that mean that alcohol while driving was not completely out of the question before that in Costa Rica?
Right. So that's another funny story. But one of the nice things, and I won't say drinking and driving is a nice thing because it's obviously a dumb idea, but in Costa Rica, you're very free to not be worried about things like that. I think that not a whole lot of cops out there looking for people that had a beer or two. Let's put it that way. No, especially.
Gotcha.
But yeah, so they shut down the beaches. There's actually even a video that made it all the way to Surfline of the police shooting warning shots at surfers who were running down the beach. So they had a pretty serious lockdown, but they also had almost no COVID. So who knows? I'm confused. Sometimes, I was very careful during COVID. I was happy to hear this morning that my small city hasn't reported a single case in 5 days, and that our vaccination rate somewhere around 70%. But I started thinking I was the one that's crazy. I have friends who, for non-political reasons were forced to live their lives, right? I mean, they had jobs that they needed to go do, and they seemed like they were taking unnecessary risks from my seat, but they never caught COVID. I'm wondering if I was the crazy one at this point, but happy it's almost over, or maybe.
I like Corrado isn't with us, but I don't see him anyway. He said something that struck me as being very good. The chances of catching it are low unless you're really a fool, I would say. Unless you're really touching, getting too close constantly. You'd have to do it a number of times. It's not like you're walking on the sidewalk and somebody on the opposite sidewalk has it. Even if they cough, it's unlikely. But what Corrado said about all these precautions, and I kind of agree, is if somebody gave you a ton of cherries and you knew one of them was poisoned, how many would you eat? It's kind of an interesting parallel if you think about it, or the revolver thing. Hey, Randall's got a thing he's going to play to bring back the memories. Go for it, Randall. You got it queued up.
Okay, I'm presuming I've got loop back and audio hijack and everything all wired up the right way. We'll see. We'll see. That's why I was muted before. Let's see if I just push this button.
The software you are using has been changed. The new software is free Libra open source software. Please make a note of it.
There you go.
Great. And we were hoping to have her live at some point, and I don't.
Yeah, it's too
Well, if you
bad.
had a meeting, you gotta do the biz.
What's funny is I couldn't hear that. It's the only place that I didn't wire up was from VLC over to my ears, so I didn't hear it at all.
Oh, very cool. Actually,
It's okay. I've heard it before, though.
I had our old thing on the first video, little promo video that I did. I remember I put the one with all of the YouTube little vignettes, little posters. There was a very, very old intro that Allison did.
Wow.
What else is happening? Oh, by the way, I saw Bob Bowles. Let me see. I have to go down now. Here he is.
How are you?
I've got to open up the.
Am I live?
Got to open up the get more space, more real estate here on my screen. There we go.
Mic check. Hello. Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're there. What's happening? What are you doing? Where are you? What are you doing? You still in that?
Well, so I back when I knew you in the VUC, I was at VVOX, which was a spinoff of the Free World Dial-Up folks. I was there for about 9 years. Then I went to work for a UK call center company for a while. That was a lot of fun. Got them to install Camilio to make some things better. And I'm actually back at VVOX. VVOX was bought by a company called Unity, which makes a gaming engine. Unity is a wonderful worldwide company, and we're doing VVOX voice things. It's a lot of fun. I have to shout out to Emil though, because in the early day of the pandemic, one of my most favorite places to go was meet.jit.c/test. Because if you sat in test long enough, you would meet interesting people from all over the world, because that is the string that they would type in when they were testing it out.
Yeah, it's almost like chat roulette.
I mean, March was such a weird time, but maybe March, April, but I just couldn't resist hanging out there. It was really a lot of fun. It's
actually funny also how many people were complaining that, I went to test and I saw or heard these things that I didn't want to see or hear.
There was some abuse there.
And there was, but it's, it's kind of like, it's funny how when you free things up, and it's like you're obviously going there of your own volition, and then people immediately come back embarrassed and this shouldn't have happened, and it's your fault that it happened. And I understand they didn't expect it.
It was awesome. No, I met people all over the world and had very awesome conversations, and it was sort of the in it together in the pandemic with people from literally from all over the world. It was awesome. It was a lot of fun. Do it again. I mean, with some other reason to do it.
Chris, have you got any recent motorcycle pictures you can slap on the screen?
Oh, I'll look for one.
Keep looking. Find. See that?
I gotta leave you folks, but this has been an absolute pleasure. And Randy, thank you for organizing this. It's been such a pleasure to see everyone and all the gray hair. It might be great hair, but it's still there. So
there you go.
Always good to see.
Speaking of gray hair, I see that Lauren Gates has joined us. Lauren, I don't know, for those who know, Lauren is the community director for FreePBX. I know that his time, at least in the open source space, was probably post VUC.
No, Lauren was on almost every call, but he was just listening. And if you got a camera, Lauren, turn it on. I don't think I've ever seen you.
I have to show off my gray hair now, do I?
Well, we were mentioning that everyone in this group is a little more gray than the last time we all got together, but here we are.
I'll do my best. Yeah. Actually, at the time, you'll recall that this falls right in the middle of my work day. So I've rarely caught it live and was always interrupted when I did. So I made an effort today, and I realized, at the time, it's like the Joni Mitchell song, right? You don't know what you got till it's gone. I treated this session pretty casually. And anyway.
You came for the fashion show and stayed for the chat, right?
Yeah, the shirt rotation worked well that way.
I ran out because I don't have the Jitsi, and there's a couple other things I don't have. Oh, I've got the Matrix. I forgot. Where is that? Well, too late now. Anyway, Matthew, I'm in mute toggle hell. Okay. Lag in the mute toggle. Okay. Anyway, okay, Chris, thank you for that. I assume that's you.
Yep, that's that was a week ago. I took a 1939 Indian chief up riding around Utah, Grand Canyon, Zion, and Bryce National Park, with about 200 guys on other old Indians and Harleys. That was a pretty cool week.
Nice ride.
Yeah, that was fun.
I love the fire extinguisher.
Yeah, luckily we didn't have to use it.
Yeah, seriously. You know, there was a movement that Fred will remember, that we were going to have Sons of Asterisk shirts or jackets made at some point, but we decided, better judgment ruled at the end for a lot of reasons that I can imagine. By the way, Fred, you remember when we went to the Harley dealership? God, you got to remember that. That's funny. I'm losing my voice because I don't do this anymore.
Yeah, David, me, and Jenny still enjoyed that, but
they wouldn't let me ride. I didn't have my license.
No, Randy, we were all going to rent Harleys after an Astrocon, but Randy didn't bring a driver's license, so they wouldn't let him. But we decided to continue. So David, Jenny, and I had an amazing ride.
That might have been in Phoenix, in fact, was it? Or Denver?
Yeah, that was in Phoenix.
Yeah,
it was a fun ride.
Yeah,
it's funny.
Yeah, I'm not sure what was going on back then, but yeah, that was a great to meet all of you folks here in Phoenix.
Yeah, that's probably where a lot of us met up. Oh, look at that! That's how cool is that?
Man,
yours is the one on the right, the rose colored one.
Mine's the pink one. I gave the baby the big one.
Cool. I got rid of mine a long time ago when I couldn't pick it up. We've been through this already. Somebody told me, "Don't you know about backing up or whatever the trick is?" I just couldn't handle it.
But that was a fun trip. That was a good Astrocon. I think that was the one that I think Randall was even there.
Randall was, I think it was Phoenix. Yeah, Phoenix. Randall went to Phoenix.
The one where I met Allison. Yeah,
exactly. Exactly.
So and had drinks. I remember that part too. Only for a while though, right? I don't remember the rest of the evening.
Jenny went to that one, which was fun. It's a good time.
We should have got her on. I'm telling you, there's a very big lack of diversity in this thing.
Yeah, I think she's fine.
Still waiting for Austin to show up. Well, I got a list of people here. Has anybody not had the chance to show themselves or speak or anything? No, we got everybody in pretty much. Yeah, I figured, you're probably sick of hearing me say this if you've read me on LinkedIn, but for some reason, that initial post about this got 12,000 views.
Wow.
And on LinkedIn, I mean, my biggest post has probably been 11 views, before. And that's normal. I don't say anything interesting. But this particular one, maybe, and I don't think it was overshared or anything. I just, for some reason. So as a result, I've got all these recruiters are looking at my profile, and the first thing they read is, "I'm not looking for work." But who knows? Maybe the right offer comes up. Hey, right? I'm also disappointed. Diana, what time is it? She won't be around until maybe 8 o'clock. We'll probably be done by then. Who would like a block of time to talk about any topic they want? Emil had all these topics, but he's gone now. Anything?
And I'm going to have to drop off too, Randy, but it was really good to see all of you guys. It's been a long time. Hey, if you do this more often, this would be fun. No commitments, but it'd be fun.
Well, maybe we'll do the Jitsi thing once in a while. Why not?
Cool. Have a great rest of your day, folks. Good seeing you.
Okay, great.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.
So, Alan, where do we write to get into the Tad hacks? What's the latest and the greatest? Contact tadhack.com.
Yeah, just go to tadhack.com or tadsummit.com. You get everything there. But I make it easy for you. I just spam you on an almost daily basis. So,
Oh, you're on Twitter and everything. And yeah, if people follow you, they got all the news.
Exactly. Yeah. So, we're still hoping against hope that we'll be able to do something in person with Tad Summit, EMEA Americas. we've got partnered with Go Contact, so we're hoping we'll be able to do something in person or Vero. I mean, we'll just have to see how this, second, third wave with the Delta variant impacts. Because UK, what we've been looking at is hospital admissions as a leading indicator, because it's like a 6 week to 2 month basically sort of curve from that. And unfortunately with the UK, that's not looking too good. I mean, I'll be honest with you, I'm a little worried here for North America, because vaccination rates, because of belief over rational thought, mean that, some states are not. Yeah.
New cases.
Yeah.
2,439. I'm reading it backwards.
Yeah.
That's the app here. You guys have an app? How many people don't trust this app? 31,440,000 people have had at least one shot here in France.
That's good.
That's half the population.
Yeah.
The people, adults are more like 50, so that's a pretty good percentage.
Yeah.
The ICU occupancy and globally in this country, 34%. It was like 110.
Yes.
For a long time. There she is.
It's it's the one that it's the bit that's scary though, isn't it? It's the fact that even if cases are only rising very slowly now, it's that lesson that it's 6 weeks later that people really start to die.
Yeah.
Because they first of all they're ill for a few days, and then they're a bit uncomfortable for a few days, and then they go to hospital, and they can keep them alive for a very long time in hospital. But then, and I think that's what's got everybody worried now. We were supposed to be complete removal of all restrictions from Monday.
Yeah.
And that's been put back 4 weeks because just because the thing is that somebody catching it now, about 1% of them are in hospital in 6 weeks' time and dying.
Exactly.
And it's just, and I think it's belief over over fact here. Everybody is so fed up with it. Your thing about that. There's here's some cherries. One of them's poisonous.
Well, the other thing, the most worrisome thing isn't talked about much. I mean, intelligent people, you guys certainly have heard this and know. But for example, I know somebody who's perfectly healthy, got it, wasn't a big deal, but he's still months later having breathing problems. I mean, by breathing problems, saxophone player. So he can't play. He can breathe, he's not in hospital. Horrible.
My wife has a friend who's got long COVID, and she went from being someone in her 30s or 40s and perfectly healthy to her hair falling out, having diabetes, heart problems, kidney problems, liver problems, just general fatigue, can't even go up a flight of stairs, can't vacuum a room. And that's the scary part, is that everybody's worried about the deaths, but actually there's more people getting long COVID than dying.
Exactly. And there's some new thing now with the black lungs they're talking about. I mean, this is
that's the use of steroids, though. If they're overusing steroids to help with the breathing, also if you're in a tropical climate, so there's like a number of factors. Although with the UK being such a damp place, most probably you'll see black lung there as well. But most places,
plus the food is so terrible. Oh, did I?
So Peter, I hate to leave on such a sour note, but I'm going to have to drop. So it was great seeing everybody.
See you, Fred.
Great to see you.
Right,
bye, Fred.
Take care.
Give our best to Jenny.
You got it.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Hey, Peter, are you still in Scotland?
No. So, I mean, I always lived down in the south of England, but I moved, for those who know the UK, I used to live near Southampton, and now I live in a village called Yapton in West Sussex, which is halfway between the glorious seaside towns of Bognor Regis and Littlehampton. This is so I live out in the countryside here now, here comes a visitor. You want to come and say hello to people? This is Luke.
Hey, Luke.
Hey, hi, how you doing?
Yeah, say hello.
Hi.
There we go. I think this is probably my message to tell me to go in for dinner, because I actually, unlike when I was on the VUC before, I now have a wife who actually tries to take care of me. Which I'm actually very grateful for.
Excellent.
Do we need to go inside, Luki? No.
There you go.
So yeah, I'm actually in a shed in the garden. Even before the pandemic, I mostly worked from home. New Voice Media is based up in Basingstoke. It's a 90-minute drive, so I mostly work at home anyway. So when he was born, I started off with an office in the house. When he was born, I moved outside the house. That worked up until he learned to open doors.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, they do that. So I think actually I will actually have to go and take care of this one.
Good to see you, Peter. It's been years and years. I remember we sat and had a drink in the airport while our flight was canceled or something. I remember that.
Oh, was that coming back from something in Atlanta or something? There was always there.
Some coming back from someplace. Flight got delayed or canceled. Where else are you going to go? Airport bar, right, Alan? Airport.
Cool. I better go anyway.
Cheers, Peter. Thank you for coming. Okay, wait a minute. Do I see? It's Daniel, Bob, Mike's leaving. My Kingdom for a Woman. Come on, Allison. You know what? Maybe I could ping.
You'll be needing a bigger kingdom.
Let me see. Yeah, that's a good one.
Unfortunately, now it's becoming tokenism, so we need to be careful. It's not considered tokenism.
No, we got to have Diana in here. Where is she? What about it? Okay, last I heard, message. Come on, Diana. Hey, come on.
I had a couple photos from Atlanta. Randy, you want to look at this one?
Oh yeah, I had the same amount of hair and same color. Isn't that funny? Let's see, where's the link?
See, I went to one in Phoenix and one in Denver.
And the Denver one, it snowed. It was beautiful, and then it snowed. The next day it snowed, and it was freezing cold or something.
Yeah, and I had no clothing because I was on my way back from LA.
And the guy who lives there, help me out, Michael.
Dave Michaels.
Yeah, Dave Michaels. I knew there was a Michael in there. Dave Michaels. We were up at his place. Remember that? We visited him.
Yep.
And that was a great time too. Those days. The thing is,
you went on to become quite a pundit.
Yeah, I see. Well, we're public, so yeah, I see that he does the thing with whatever his name is there. They do a podcast, I guess. Huh?
Yeah. He at the time he started out on VUC. He was still running a dealer. He was a Mitel dealer. Buffalo Communications was the company name, and he sold that and went off into pundit space. He got, I think it was cloud. He kind of looked at cloud communications and went, "Wow, coming to the end." So he was going to get out of that.
There was a great moment when we did the cage match that I think you organized that between Dave and you? I can't remember.
Yeah.
Local and local on premises and cloud.
Because I was confused at the time. That's a long time ago now, but between cloud and hosted, I thought there was a point of differentiation there that was getting lost in the hype over what was then cloud.
Hey, cloud is just using somebody else's server.
Except, not everything that's quote unquote in the cloud is in the cloud, right? And
correct.
It's just, it could be outside your walls, but that doesn't make it cloud.
Yeah.
Okay, with that, we can stay on. Anybody can stay on as long as they like, but I am gonna cut the YouTube feed. Thank you, everybody. If anybody cares, here's the recording. You were able to see it with all these illustrious pillars of the VoIP, WebRTC, video, communications, et cetera, community. All old friends. Maybe it's a boring thing to see a bunch of people who know each other, and if you don't know them. And since Diana and Allison didn't show up, it was pretty much Sausage Party City.
Oh yeah, but there's a lot of brilliant people in this channel that are saying cool things, but you can't depend all on
Got to be more
now
than
I'm going to
that.
stop right there. I'm just going to get in trouble.
No, but we really do. The truth is that there are plenty of women and other, what's the newest expression, non-declared, whatever. I mean, I don't care what your orientation or biological, none of that matters. And there are plenty of people of all sizes, shapes, and declarations of whatever out there. The problem is we don't know that many of them. I know 2 that I named. There's a few other that various people you guys know from the companies that you've worked with. Alan, you've had 2 amazing women who help you with the show.
Oh yeah. But at TED Summit Asia, we had how many? 1, 2, 3. We had nearly 10 female presenters. So it's slow, it's painful, and back to the fetish, particularly here in North America, they have about wanting to know your sexual orientation. It's like, why are you wanting to have sex with them? Otherwise, there's no need to care or know. They're just people. But anyway.
Well, I just want to close out with one thing. People are putting these in all their social media. They put, he, she, they. I put it. Okay. I want to put it. And with that, goodbye, everybody.
Take care.
We're on track. So this is the adult version coming up, so you don't have to leave if you don't want to. Okay.
See you in another 20 years.
Ending the YouTube stream.
Okay.
Not yet. I love that they give you a not yet option.